Welcome back. You are now looking at new video into CNN showing the aftermath of an overnight attack into Syria. Syria's deputy foreign minister tells CNN the attack came from Israeli rockets and amounts to a declaration of war. Huge explosions rocked a Damascus suburb for hours. The Syrians say they will retaliate in their own time and way. With me now is Congressman Peteking. He is chairman of the Homeland Security Subcommittee on Counterintelligence and Terrorism. He's also a member of the House Intelligence Committee. Thank you so much, Congressman. I want to begin with Syria because just when you think, could it get more violent, could it get more chaotic, it does. So my question to you is whether it is time for the U.S. to directly arm specified rebels.
Sandy, I have real concerns. The reason I say that is that so much time has gone by, and unfortunately, to a large extent, al-Qaeda elements have a lot of control within the rebel movement. And my concern is that by arming the rebels, we could be strengthening al-Qaeda. So whatever arming we do, and obviously Assad is evil, and it's in everyone's interest that he go, but if we are going to arm the rebels, we have to make sure that those arms are not going to end up in the possession of al-Qaeda supporters, nor at the end game is al-Qaeda going to be in a position to take over this movement?
Because well, that's a pretty high bar,
Assad,
right? I mean, you don't. I mean, we put weapons into countries a lot and don't know where they're going to end up. Are you saying that basically just a bad idea for the U.S. to directly arm rebels?
I'm saying that unless we know exactly who they're going to, at least generally who they're going to, that it could be very counterproductive, which is why I believe the president turned down the proposal General Petraeus and Secretary Clinton last year, because he wouldn't be sure where those weapons are going. Now, hopefully, we've been looking at this carefully, and we have a better feel now, a better understanding of where the weapons will be going. But until then, I'm very concerned that we could just replace one terrible dictator with a terrible ideological movement, which is aimed at our destruction.
Let me move you now to the latest news out of the Boston bombings, which is that two students here on student visas one of them at least was allowed back in the country when in fact his student visa was no longer valid because he was no longer in school. The same holds true for another foreign student, although he did not leave the country. So what we have here, as far as I understand it, is a customs service who brought somebody in because for all they knew that this visa they were looking at was valid, but there is information available that it was not. And I think the question is, how is it possible that the frontline people at the border of the U.S. essentially don't have information when visas become invalid?
First of all, there should be a way to correct this. Now, the problem they would tell you is there are 850,000 student visas, and there's an I-20 form which certifies whether or not that person is still in compliance with the requirements of the visa, whether or not he's still an accredited student. And unfortunately, it does not appear the technology is there to marry them up, which I think is inexcusable.
Seriously?
11 years after September 11th. That is one of the reasons you'll be given. Having said that, the Secretary of Homeland Security of the department has said that starting almost immediately, every effort has to be made so that every student coming in now is going to be, everyone coming in with a student visa, my understanding is going to be stopped and checked and examined at the airport, which could cause longer lines, but I think it's something we have to do after what we saw happen in Boston.
Not all of those students.
I agree with you.
Not all of those students on that list are in violation of their student visas. So it would just seem to me that it would ping somewhere, and the fact that the people who are in charge of letting people in or out of the country don't have access to that information seems to me kind of a government-wide failure, because you've been on the Homeland Security Committee. I mean, isn't what Customs knows and what it doesn't know sort of a part of trying to keep the country safe? It just seems like a sort of an across-the-board failure to even see that this was a problem.
It was known to be a problem, and you have Customs, which is CBP, Customs and Border Protection. You have ICE, Immigration Customs Enforcement. Each of them has a separate list. One has the I-20 form, which shows whether or not the student is in compliance. The other has the student visa. And Homeland Security should have been working more effectively toward make this technologically feasible. Same with the visa exit. This has not been done technologically. It has to be done. It is finally going to be done, but it is going to, in the interim, it is going to cause some delays at the airport, because the person at the airport is not going to know for certain whether or not that person is in compliance, and that is going to be the short-term delay. But it has to be done.
Yeah, it probably should have been done like years earlier. Let me ask you, you are having a hearing in your committee about the Boston bombings. What do you want answered? What don't you know that you need to know?
Well, the new chairman, Mike McCall, has scheduled his hearing. As far as I know, it's going to be the first hearing on Capitol Hill. My concern, Candy, is that when the FBI was told by the Russians to look into the older brother, they may have done the best they could under the guidelines they had available to them. But how can you effectively determine whether or not a person has become radicalized if you don't talk to people in his mosque, talk to his imam, because this is a radicalization stemming from a perversion of religion. And to me, because of political correctness, I understand the FBI was not able to talk to anyone in the mosque to find out whether or not there were any conditions to lead them to believe that he was radicalized. Also, did they discuss it with the Boston police? Who would have better knowledge of what's going on the ground than a local police force? That's why in New York, we have 1,000 police officers working on counterterrorism, and Commissioner Kelly is not afraid to be politically incorrect. He does what has to be done to find out what's going on in the community.
Let me ask you, do you expect that there will be more arrests? Are there others out there that you believe are subject to arrest at this point?
Well, I'm not, this is not inside information. Just from looking at this generally, it's still impossible for me to, not impossible, very difficult to believe that these two could have carried out this level of attack with this level of sophistication and precision, acting by themselves, either without training from overseas or having at least facilitators here at home. It's just, again, to have two bombs that went off almost perfectly, unfortunately, simultaneously, right. Then have the third one, which also worked, and the explosives, all that large amount of precursors. No, to me, I think there had to be assistance, and that's why the FBI, I think, is going after this so vigorously and effectively.
And can you tell me, there are also going to be some hearings into Benghazi and what happened there, not your committee, it's Chairman Issa's committee. What questions do you have remaining about what happened in Benghazi, either the lead-up, the incident itself in which 4 Americans were killed, or the aftermath? What's your main question?
Main question I would have still goes back to the talking points as to why they would change, who changed them, and how does that relate to whether or not there was any element of a cover-up here, that the State Department was asked to provide more security, did not provide it, and after the fact to come up with this cover story about a video and did not want to go into the fact of why there was not enough security there, and what are we going to do in the future? Because we have outposts around the world which are vulnerable to attack. What are we going to do to ensure that they have the security, and what is the chain of command going to be from those asking for the security, and who makes a decision in Washington whether or not to give them that security?
Congressman Peter King, thank you for joining us.